How are we doing, everybody? It is Corey Lee here today, and welcome to my very first episode of what do I call this podcast? You want to know something? I think I got a name for this podcast. This podcast is gonna be called. This podcast is gonna be called Whippersnappers Boot Camp. You want to know why I thought of that name? I'm going to tell you exactly why I thought of that name, the word Whippersnappers Boot Camp. Because, first and foremost, as I was thinking about the idea behind this podcast, I kind of sounded like I sounded like a very, very, very grumpy old man in a way, who really cared about some people. I also sound like a very grumpy old man who's been around the block, and I'm talking to a bunch of pipsqueaks who has not been around the block, who think they know what they're doing. And I was sitting there saying this to myself, calling everyone a whippersnapper. I said, you know what? I wonder what in the world a whippersnapper means. And I thought about that word because it has the word snap in there, like photo, like how you snap a photo. So then I thought, what does the word whippersnapper even mean? I looked it up. Come to find out, it fits the description of who I'm talking about exactly. Okay? Fits a description to a T. You want to know what it means? Let me look up the definition for you, word for word, instead of having me paraphrase it. Let's see what we have. So I'm recording this outside in my car. If you hear some background noise, please don't mind. But I think the background noise is kind of like some accent noise. You know what I mean? Just something like, just kind of something to throw it in there, not to have it sound too dry. But a young and inexperienced person considered to be presumptuous or overconfident. This fits exactly what I'm talking about to a T. But I originally came up with the word because it had the word snap, and we're talking about photography here. So welcome to episode 1 of Whippersnappers Boot Camp. And this is where I train you to think like a more experienced photographer. Okay? I'm not going to show you how to be the best. I'm just going to show you how to think like you are. So that way you can be the best in your own right. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm going to tell you how to think. But I might actually tell you what to think. Yes, I will. But I wouldn't want to call it that because there are times when I break my own rules. There are times when I deviate from certain principles to fit certain situations when the principles just won't work. And so I want to show you how to think like that too. You might hear a lot of different things I say that sound like they contradict one another. But honestly, they are all right at the same time. It's just about how you apply it. Okay? And today we're going to talk about lenses. All right? Lenses. I didn't want to talk about lenses first. I wanted to talk about lighting first, but I think lighting is going to be number 1 or number 2 as far as episodes are concerned. But I thought to talk about lenses first because lenses is my most I know lenses more than I know everything else. But I know everything else a lot more than you. Okay? But that's not to say that you can't grow to a level of experience to know more than me. I'm looking to have whippersnappers surpass me. Okay? That's what I'm looking for. If you little whippersnappers drink down this knowledge from me and everybody else who also helps educate you in the wonderful world of photography, then we have all done our jobs. But lenses, man, let's get on lenses here, shall we? But I want to talk about a certain type of way people use lenses, especially whippersnappers. Whippersnappers always have a habit of doing this with lenses, especially when it comes to like wide aperture lenses, f2.8 zoom lenses, f1.8, f1.4 primes, things of that nature. It's like whippersnappers have a habit of doing this because I was a young whippersnapper. When I first started photography, I was 23 years old. I was desperate to make my pictures look the best. Actually, I can't really say that. I was desperate to make my pictures look the way other experienced photographers couldn't make theirs look. And I didn't know what the secret to their photography was. I thought the secret to it was all about having the right piece of equipment, the right combination of gear. Well, taking into consideration that knowledge and experience plays a huge role in that too. But I thought it was all about having the right combination of gear, and it just wasn't. I had more expensive equipment as a whippersnapper than what I do now. I had less confidence in my skills with higher end equipment as a whippersnapper than what I do now with equipment that doesn't even do the work for me. As a whippersnapper, I had all the Canon L lenses. I did. I just never really liked f2.8 wider angle lenses like 24 to 70s f2.8s. I never got the point of those because I would have rather had image stabilizer on the lens like that, and f4 is plenty. You little whippersnappers. Okay, you bought your first camera. You buy yourself a kit lens package. Let me guess, it came with 2 lenses. You feel like you can run the world because you get started out with 2 lenses. I bought this camera. It's a nice big professional camera. And it comes with 2 lenses, guys. And it goes all the way to 300 millimeters, guys. I have 18 to 300 millimeters in my kit. I'm the best. Right? And then you run into an issue. Your pictures are never that sharp. So then you say to yourself, I need to get myself a 50 millimeter f1.8. Or you say to yourself, I need to get a 70 to 200 f2.8. I don't know why, but it's like young whippersnappers are always drawn to a 51.8 or a 70 to 200 2.8 as their next lens. You gotta have that 70 to 200, guys. Gotta have that 70 to 200. That's the only way you can get nice pictures is with that 70 to 200. If you don't have that 2.8, then you're not really getting the best out of your image. It's a lie. Absolute lie. You don't need f2.8. You can live with an f4 lens. You really can. You really can live with an f4 lens. Not only can you live with an f4 lens, you can live with it stopped down to 5.6 and still get incredibly good images. But I'm here to talk to them whippersnappers who's mad because they can't get sharp images with their kit lens. And I'm also here to talk to them whippersnappers who then upgrades their kit lens to something more wide aperture. I'll give you a 2-for-1 special on episode 1. How about that? Thank you for watching. It's the end of the show. No, I'm just playing. I'll give you a 2-for-1 special on episode 1 here, guys. So, you get yourself a nice little kit lens. Let me guess, an 18 to 50 something. Maybe an 18 to 45, a 16 to 40, or something crazy like that. I don't really know. I don't keep up with new lenses these days. I don't. I stopped keeping up with the stuff Canon makes when they came out with the 5D Mark IV. That's how grown out of keeping up with the latest greatest gear I have become. When Canon made the 5D Mark IV, I knew that they weren't going mirrorless. I knew that they weren't going to innovate. It wasn't even about mirrorless. It was just about innovation. I knew that they weren't going to innovate, and so I went to Pentax. Okay, I went to Pentax, and I was only able to afford one lens at the time, and that was the 28 to 105 millimeter f3.5 to 5.6 kit lens. That's all I was able to afford. That's all I could get at the time. And I had already had a little bit more experience with lenses than I had already had experience with, how to use my gear as far as lenses and blah 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 and yada yada yada. So I had that f3.5 to 5.6 kit lens. But I didn't like the idea. But I come from the Canon world where I had 24 to 70 f4s or 24 to 105 f4. So I was so used to that constant aperture thingamajiggy. Like, you know what I mean? I was just so used to using constant aperture. So I kept my 28 to 105 millimeter kit lens stopped down to 5.6 minimum because I just didn't like the idea of my aperture changing as I zoomed in and out. And boy, let me tell you, that was the sharpest kit lens I had ever used. The sharpest kit lens I had ever used. The thing was small, compact, lightweight, colorful, and sharp. And I'm going to tell you, one of the reasons it was sharp is because I had it stopped down, except for at the long end. You little whippersnapper. You think that you can't get sharp images with your kit lens, and I'm going to tell you why. Lenses, especially cheap lenses like kit lenses, are made to make you want to buy better stuff. That's what they're made for, to make you want to buy more expensive stuff. You don't believe me? If you don't believe me, then just wait until one day you're looking at somebody else's pictures shot at a wider aperture, even at f3.5, and theirs are astronomically sharper than yours. And you're like, I can't get that with my lens. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I'm going to talk about how you can make your kit lens a little sharper. If it's an f3.5 to 5.6, just stop it down to 5.6 throughout the whole zoom range. Stop your lens down to the narrowest aperture you have, as far as wide open, if it's a variable aperture, and just use it that way. The majority of the time, you will not be on the long end and long end only. You will oftentimes be on the short end. And when you stop your lens down, as in use a narrower aperture, instead of 3.5, you're using 5.6 where you could have used 3.5. That's stopping your lens down, closing down that aperture. A lot of whippersnappers know nothing about closing down an aperture. All they know is point the camera at something, I put it on scene mode, and then run around and tell everybody I'm a professional photographer. Little whippersnapper. Close that lens down a little. Yes, it's less light. I don't get enough light. I got a message coming for that. Just wait. I don't get enough light. Well, You could do one thing or the other. You can buy a 51.8. The Canon 51.8 STM is the best lens in the world. Take it from a guy who had two different 70 to 200s. I had two different 24 to something f4 lenses. And EF and RF lenses are not that much different as far as end result. I'm talking EF glass here. I had 28 to 300s. As far as the L series lenses go, I had all the stuff Canon could put out. I just never bought the 85 1.2 or the 50 1.2. I never got the point of doing that. I never thought it was that serious, so I would just go with the Sigma EX DG series lenses, the 85 and the 50 1.4. Those were good enough and they were priced fair enough. And the end result was not that much different. It was only just a hair more bokeh that you could get out of the Canon. It was just a hair more, okay? But, you know, take it from a guy who's had all that stuff, you know. But, like I was saying, the Canon 51.8 STM is the best lens in the world. It's perfect. The autofocus is fast. It's clear. It's sharp. It's colorful. It renders the out of focus areas really well. If you want a nice lens that is priced at nothing, buy that. I have a full frame camera right now. I had a better camera 3 years ago than what I have now. I actually got two cameras. I got a Sigma FP and a Canon EOS R. I could have whatever camera I want. I just don't find it necessary. I find that my money is better spent on other things because my camera doesn't let me down. It works. And it didn't cost me a fortune because it was older. It works. It's the best lens in the world for how much money it costs and for how small it is. So if you want more light, just go with that lens. It'll work. I promise you it'll work. But the reason your pictures with your kit lens isn't that sharp is because you don't close down your aperture. You don't use the right aperture for the shot that you need the aperture for. You want to shoot a landscape at f3.5 wide open on a kit lens. Come on, like what do you think you're going to get with that? Background blur? What do you think you're going to get with that? You're better off cranking up the ISO and add noise reduction if it's not going to be all that sharp anyway. At least you'll have it a little sharper. I used to be the little whippersnapper who thought that as long as my camera knew what to do, and as long as I knew what to point it at, then it was always going to turn out to be good because it's an interchangeable lens camera, better than what you can get with a phone or some other little rinky-dinky old camera. I knew nothing about what aperture to use. As far as shutter speed, yes. But as far as what aperture, I use the widest aperture available all the time. I had no idea why I would do that. Not even knowing that most lenses, especially, I don't know why, but it's like prime lenses suffer from this more than zoom lenses do as far as the lenses I used. It's like prime lenses usually start off a lot softer than zoom lenses do. I don't know why. Most people might tell you something different, and it might just be true as far as the lenses they've experienced. But it seemed like zoom lenses these days, or maybe just the ones I have, are oftentimes sharper at distances, at wider apertures than prime lenses are. I have no idea why. Or it might just, might just depend on the lens, honestly. The lenses I use to this day, I'll tell you every individual lens I use. When I got back into the Canon world after leaving Pentax, I got back in the Canon world specifically because I wanted to adapt Pentax lenses onto my camera. I fell in love with Pentax lenses after being in Pentax because the lenses have this kind of character to them. And not only do they have this special character to them, they are not that expensive. Hence, one of my reasons for going to Pentax in the first place. I think everybody else is overpriced, honestly. But Pentax can make some overpriced stuff, too. Like their 51.4 SDM lens, that lens is not worth the money. Their new 85 isn't worth the money. In fact, a lot of their full frame lenses are not worth the money except the 28 to 105 millimeter kit lens. All the rest of them are just overpriced. They get you into the game on their inexpensive, highly featured full frame cameras, and then they charge you a whole lot for the lenses. But not all their lenses are overpriced. Only some of them are. Only some. A lot of their lenses are priced way too low for what they give you. Dead serious. But not here to compare Pentax to anyone. Little whippersnapper. Let me tell you something. You can't shoot everything wide open. I don't care if it's a kit lens. I get it. Your aperture is already dark as it is. But that's the reason why you buy a prime. If you need more light, spend a little more money on a prime. Do that. If you have a crop sensor camera, I probably wouldn't start out with a 50 millimeter. However, that lens is a no-brainer for how much it costs. I would probably start off with something like a 28 or a 20 or like a 35. If you're planning to go full frame overnight, maybe just get a 50. That might work. Because once that crop factor hits that 35, you'll be around the 50 millimeter field of view. Once that crop factor hit that 28, you'll be at 30 something. I just can't do the math for you right here on the spot. But learn to stop your lens down, even when shooting portraits. Now, as far as portraits are concerned, no, you may not want it to be that sharp because that's more stuff you got to clean up in post. A lot of my portrait images are not really sharp, but they look good. I try not to make them astronomically sharp on purpose. Maybe it's just the lenses I use. I haven't used the Canon kit lens in ages. I really do think that they're designed to be poor quality on purpose. I do. I really do. But it's not impossible to get extremely good quality out of those lenses as long as you know what you're doing. Stop that lens down. The wider open your lens is, the less sharp it's going to be, especially at distances. Especially when we're talking like the extremes of the zoom range, like all the way zoomed out or all the way zoomed in. That's when your lens performs the worst. It's at the extremes of the zoom range, wide open or extremely closed down. Like the sweet spot is usually between 5.6 and f8. The sweet spot for getting a decent amount of light. But some people tell you, f11. Well, who wants to shoot everything at f11? Nobody. I think f8 would get you a sharp enough image and enough light to shoot a lot of stuff. I shot weddings for years with my Pentax 28-105 f3.5 to 5.6, using it at a minimum aperture of 5.6 in low light. I did. I didn't think it was possible, but heck, it was the only lens I had. I didn't want to be a little whippersnapper like I used to be and start buying every lens I thought I need, because I wanted to make sure I studied them to think about what to really spend my money on. I went from having a really good job to not so having a good job. So I didn't really have it like that to buy all the stuff I wanted. And as I started to slowly sell my Canon lenses off is when I started to slowly replace them with Pentax lenses that I did a lot of research on. Before you run out and buy a lens that somebody told you need, do research first. Do research first. You don't want to just spend money because somebody came up with a nice picture with it. It might not be for you. All because some unlearned person who can afford nice gear told you that this is what you need. All because you looked at some YouTube reviewer's photos and you saw the nice things they can do with their lens and they said, this is the lens you need. How do you know you need it? And they're over here reviewing a 100 to 400 and you shoot portraits. This is the lens you need. And so you go out and buy a 100 to 400 trying to shoot portraits. You could have spent your money on something. Man, they always tell you every lens is the lens you need. I mean, they don't really tell you that, honestly. They say, this is who this lens is for. You're like, oh, maybe that is for me. You want to justify yourself into nice things. That's fine. You can spend your money on whatever you want. But all I'm trying to tell you how to do is how to think. How to think. Because the gear you have might be enough already. You might. Well, as far as a camera and lens you have, you still need other stuff. So, I was the kind of whippersnapper who would buy like a 70 to 200 2.8. And I would see all the nice images that people would get with a 70 to 200 2.8. And I would say, oh man, that's sharp. Oh, that's good. Yada, yada, yada. And I would literally shoot everything at 2.8. On my 51.8, I would shoot everything at f1.8. I would. I thought stopping my aperture down was stupid. I'm like, if I'm going to use f4, I may as well buy an f4 lens. I spent the money on a 2.8 because I want to use 2.8. You know what? Do what you want. But let me tell you something here, you little whippersnapper. Lenses don't perform their best wide open. Not all of them. I got some lenses that perform better wide open than they do closed down, like my 645 120 macro. I don't know why that lens is sharp. I mean, it just looks better wide open than stop down. I have no clue why. And I'm not saying that it doesn't get better when you stop it down. It just looks good wide open. Like my 645 300 millimeter star lens f4, it looks good wide open. And it doesn't get worse stop down. It just looks better wide. I don't know. And I got other lenses that look better stop down. That's all I use is the 645 A series lenses, the manual focus. I have nothing but manual focus lenses to this day. I don't want any other lens. I could have bought any lens I wanted. When I got back into Canon, I started getting EF glass. I bought the first version of the 24-105 f4 because I said to myself, If I'm ruling the world with a Pentax 28 to 105, 3.5 to 5.6, it ain't nothing wrong with the first version of the 24 to 105 f4 Canon lens. I can rule the world a little better with that because at least I got f4. And it's good quality too. I mean, they're both on par with one another. That's the only Canon expensive-ish lens that I have, and that lens isn't even expensive anymore. Like when that lens came out, it was like $800. On the used market, when I first started, it was a $500 lens. That lens is still the same quality of a lens it was then, now. Just because more expensive things exist doesn't mean the older stuff starts getting worse. It doesn't. It still looks like an $800 lens at the end of the day, even though I paid $200 for it, used, for like the third time around. That's like my third time buying that lens, honestly. I bought it twice when I shot Canon at first, and then I bought one more. No, actually, I bought it once when I shot Canon at first, sold it, quote unquote upgraded to the 24 to 70 f4 IS. That wasn't really an upgrade at all, but I just wanted it for the macro feature, and it was smaller. Then after I left Pentax, I bought the 24 to 105, the standard first version, sold it, and bought it again from the same person at a lower price. So I must really like that lens in order to have bought it 3 times. I must really have no problem with f4 lenses if I was to buy that lens 3 times. Especially after being as experienced as I am now. Especially after being as experienced as I am now. All glory to God for that, man. Because he led me into what to learn. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't know anything. If it wasn't for hard work and dedication, I wouldn't have even been able to follow the trail. And you can do the same thing. Just listen to these podcasts that I make. This is episode 1. I don't know when episode 2 is coming out. I'm going to try and stay on a schedule here as long as I have topics. But, I bought a 70 to 200, 2.8. I shot everything at 2.8. From pictures of birds to headshots to studio shots to, landscape-ish kind of shots. And my images never really looked that sharp. After all that money I spent on that lens, my photos still weren't that sharp. I bought a lens I wasn't ready for. Just because I had the money for it. And I shot everything wide open at 2.8. Stupid. And I used to hear professionals say, oh yeah, so we stopped it down at f4. And I'm like, why would you spend the additional $500 to $1,000 on a 2.8 if you're going to just shoot it at f4? Well, that's because if you were to buy the f4, you were going to have to stop it down to 5.6. Every aperture lens you get, consider it the aperture after that. If you got an f1.8 lens, consider it like an f2 lens. If you got an f2.8 lens, consider it an f4 lens. You can still use f2.8, but it's better stop down a little. It don't even got to be a full stop, just a little. A little helps. Let's consider it the number after that. I didn't understand that. I didn't. I was just a little whippersnapper doing whatever I wanted because I had all the money that I had all the lenses money could buy. Wishing I can go back to those days and still have those lenses, but I'm kind of glad I don't. I love the lenses I have now. I don't like, even if I had more money, you wanna know what I would do? I would probably buy the same exact lenses, but just in the autofocus versions, and still adapt them to mirrorless. And the only reason I'd get the autofocus versions is because they have lens hoods to come with them. And they just are a lot lighter. My lenses are solid glass and metal with rubber grips. Manual focus works really well with focus peaking. I feel no need to have autofocus, not unless I'm shooting action. And even when I'm shooting weddings, manual focus work for me. I can shoot a whole wedding manual focus, no problem. And so what that does is, all my lenses together cost the same amount of money as one of my Canon lenses beforehand. And I get better pictures now than what I did with all of my lenses I used to have. All 8 of my lenses together probably did not cost me $1,000. Dead serious. Okay, I got 2 lenses that were like almost $300 a piece. 2. And the rest of them were like less than $200. I mean, I got 2 lenses that were $40 a piece. My 45 to 80 and my 80 to 160. I got my 200, I think I might have paid $30 for. And my 200 is beautiful. My 150, I might have paid $150. My 120 macro, I paid about $145. My 55, I paid about maybe $175, I think. I don't know, maybe it might be just a little more over $1,000, but still. Lenses these days cost $2,000. And all you get is a lens. A lens. A lens doesn't do a lot. You need more than a lens. But you can live with a lens as long as you put skill over gear. As long as you stop saying, I cannot get that shot unless I had a 70 to 200. No, just scoot up. Get closer. Premeditate what you're going to get. Premeditate what you need. I did it. A 28 to 105 millimeter lens shooting quinceañeras and weddings. And being paid top dollar for it too. I had to grow out of that. I couldn't have bought another lens. Not right away, because Pentax didn't have them. They didn't have a lot of options to pick from as I had in Canon. And so I had to really take my time and think about what I wanted. They didn't have as many options, so I was stuck with a handful of options. I'm glad I went that direction, because that taught me how to grow out of gear lust. Being in Pentax taught me how to grow out of gear lust. And I was forced to learn more about lenses instead of just spending top dollar on the best quality and just running with it. I was forced to really dig into the science of lenses and figure out what's good and what's not and why. Not just because the YouTube guys told me so. And Canon came out with a nice sample picture that made me ooh and ah over it. Or the YouTube guys, most notably. But they put more skill into them sample shots than they do anything and tell you it's about the gear. In fact, they won't even tell you that. They'll tell you everything that sounds like that but that. So that way their hands are clean from telling you that while still telling you that. That's what they do. They'll tell you everything except it's all about the gear to make you think it's all about the gear. So that way they can't be responsible from telling you while making you think that. So that way you can buy something through an affiliate link. That's why. It's all about the affiliate links, guys. That's what it's all about. But there's nothing wrong with making a living through affiliate links. At least keep it all the way naked real with people. And I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying they don't tell you the whole truth. You can literally live without this new lens. The older one works just as well. They won't say that. You can literally live without this lens. A cheaper one works just as well. They won't say that. And say, well, if you really love your photography and you don't want to let a client down on a special day, you need that 2.8 because f4 is not going to work for you in a dark environment. Yes, it will. 5.6 and 6.3 worked for me. Heck, use a flash. In fact, for most shots, you need a narrower aperture anyway to get more in focus. For most things, you need a narrower aperture anyway to get more in focus. Imagine shooting a group picture at 2.8 and only getting the first person's head in it and everybody else is blurred out. All to save the ISO, right? When you could just throw noise reduction on. I mean, noise reduction is good these days. Heck, you got image stabilizer, use it. It won't fix motion blur, but it'll work. It'll work. It'll work. Most things you need a narrower aperture. You don't want to get one person in focus and the person that's slightly behind them by 2 inches blurry. All for the love of f2.8. All for the love of f1.4 and 1.2, right? You still need to know how to work your gear. You still need to know that not everything works at wide aperture. Very little things work with a wide aperture. Very little. Especially during weddings. You have too many different things in the scene that you need to pull in focus. And shooting everything at 2.8 just because you paid the money for the 2.8, it won't work. See, but I was even dumber than that, right? I thought that no matter what I shot, just because it was 2.8 and my lens was expensive, it was going to be sharp and have nice bokeh. I'm like, yeah. Nope. Still not sharp. Because I didn't know many things about lenses getting better when the aperture stopped down a little. Getting sharper, looking better. I didn't know much about that. But I'm here to tell you that. You can get a lot of good results. You can get biting sharp results out of a kit lens if you stop it down. I mean, you might have to go to f8. But you can. You really can. It's possible. You can really do that. I did it on my kit lens. I haven't used a Canon kit lens in a while, so I don't really have that lens in my hand to be able to tell you. I mean, but lenses came a long way. They came a long way. I mean, the kit lenses that come out now, they better be good. They better be good. They better be. Lenses came a long way from when I first started. Stop your lens down, guys. Learn what aperture works for what scenario. You're not always going to need wide open. It's not always going to work for you. And you're going to notice even at 5.6, you don't get as much depth of field as you need in all things. Still stop it down. Go to f8. Go to f11. Especially with macro. I bought a macro 100 2.8 and I shot all my macro at 2.8 till I'm like, wait a minute now. Something's wrong with this. I learned really fast to stop it down. Learn really quick. Especially macro. You're going to need like F11, F14, something crazy like that. At the minimum. That's not a universal minimum. Sometime F4 can, sometime F4 can work. Sometime F8 can work. Some things, heck, you might even be able to go 2.84. But I want to blur out the background more. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to tell you how to do it. You either get closer or zoom in or use the widest aperture that makes sense for the kind of quality you need out of the image. But like zoom in and get closer. That's how you blur out the background more. Other than just wider aperture. And I'm not talking about zoom in as in crop in. Well, I got a crop sensor camera, so my 50 is more like an 80. So I really got an 80. No, you don't. You got a 50 cropped in. It's not the same as getting closer. That's cropping in closer. Getting closer is a physical change. Either you physically getting closer or that lens physically getting longer. That's why I said, if you're on a crop sensor, go with a 35 or a 28. If you can. If not, just get a 50. And then still get a 35 or a 28. F2. Still do that. Don't fool yourself, man. You don't always need to upgrade your gear for the reasons you think you do. You might be able to live with what you have for now. Spend your money on the other things that matter too. Because lenses are not the answer to getting better quality. And y'all say, oh, it's all about the glass. It's all about the glass. It's all about the glass. You want better quality, you need better glass. That's true to an extent. But even if you had better glass, you can still get the same poor quality if you're not incorporating all the other fundamentals, such as learning how to manipulate light and knowing what settings to use to get what kind of effect in what particular shot. And post-processing. Post-processing is a big deal. Very, very, very big deal. If you don't know how to edit, then you're missing out on pulling a lot of juice out of your images. If you don't know how to incorporate artificial lighting, you're missing out on being able to pull a lot of juice out of your lenses. If you don't know how to select what aperture you need for every individual shot, you don't really know how to pull a lot of juice out of the lenses you do have. So learn your way around the craft before you let salespeople tell you that your gear suck. Before you let salespeople tell you that your gear sucks, learn what to do for yourself first. And I get it. Most people in photography love photography. They'll fight somebody over their photography. They'll do anything to make nice photography. Okay, learn this. Do this too. Learn how to stop your lens down. If you want a little better quality out of kit lens, and if you bought yourself a wide aperture zoom or prime and you're a whippersnapper, it's not always about using wide aperture just because you got it. You have it for when you need it, not because you paid for it. Use it when you need it and not because you spent the money on it. Use it when you need it and not because you got it. And don't forget, the more you stop a lens down, the sharper it gets up into a point. So if it starts out at f1.8, man, you can stop it down at 2.8. I mean, you can get a sharper image with a 51.8 at 2.8 than you can with a 70 to 200 at 2.8. Or than you can with a 24 to 70 at 50 millimeters with a 2.8. You know why? Because you had to stop that 51.8 down a couple times. Most lenses don't perform their best wide open. You gotta know that. You have to know that about lenses before you throw your beloved kit lens away because some YouTube dude told you that it sucks. And if you love your craft, then you need to quit cheating on it and buy yourself this brand new shiny toy that costs more than what you spent on your own vehicle. That's serious. Lenses are more important than cameras. But lenses are not more important than skill. Lenses are more important than cameras, but lenses are not more important than lighting. You need to know that too. I would rather have a cheap camera and a poor lens and a good light and a good light modifier. And to have an expensive camera, an expensive lens, a cheap light, or no light, and no modifier. You know, take it from a guy that had, $5,000 worth of lenses, and I'm using two cheap Yongnuo speed lights with, little tiny, rinky-dinky square 5-inch soft boxes on them, or no modifier at all, and sometimes no light at all. Yeah, this lens will get it. Yeah, this camera's good. It should be able to do it. It should be able to make it look good. I got a good camera. This is full frame. Stupid. I'm talking about me now. Like, you can let that apply to you if you want it to, but I'm talking about me now. I was stupid. I don't want you little whippersnappers to be stupid. The camera industry has to do everything it can to separate you from your money because camera technology is so good that most people don't need to spend $3,500 anymore in order to get decent results. You can buy a 5D Mark II for $500 off Facebook Marketplace and get incredible results. At some point in time, the people I thought had the best gear and the best pictures were using 5D Mark IIs. And their pictures are still stunning to this day. You can escape. You can literally avoid not buying a new kit lens bundle for $800, spend $500 on a 5D Mark II and $75 on a 51.8 STM or something like that, if STM work on the Mark II, and get awesome results, man. You can really go that route, man. You really can get awesome results, awesome sauce. But still, everything I said still applies, guys. Everything. So think about that. Thank you for listening to Whippersnappers Boot Camp. I might change that name. I don't know, but I think it sounds funny right now. So I'm going to go with it for right now and see if it rings. If it never rings, I'll change it. But I just like saying whippersnapper. Think it's funny. I sound like a crazy old man. I think I am a crazy old man. I'm not going to lie. Oh no, I'm only 32. Dang. Thought I'd be young forever. Nope. I'm old. Are you listening to the old man? I know what I'm talking about, guys. I made all the dumb gear decisions in the world for you already. Like, for once in somebody's life, listen to somebody that know what they're talking about. Instead of saying to yourself, well, I got to make my own mistakes. I got to be young and dumb too. I got to learn that for my own self. Okay, listen. Just act like you had. I have no reason for telling you not to buy better gear. None. I have no reason for telling you not to. And I still think you should buy better gear. I do. I just wish a lot of little whippersnappers had better reasons for buying better gear. I have every reason in the world to buy better gear, and I won't. Because I can live without it. My money is better spent on lights and light modifiers and soft boxes and beauty dishes and SD cards and, faster computer and, more software and, heck, maybe another inexpensive manual focus lens. I only want to upgrade my Canon EOS R for one reason, and that's to have 2 SD card slots. I think if everything about that camera stayed the same except 2 SD card slots, it would be the best camera in the world. I'm not even crying about IBIS. I know how to get the most out of that camera. I can still live with an old camera. Like, my camera's 5 years old. Heck, my lenses are 35 years old. And I take better pictures than I did with, the latest, greatest tech. I do. But I just thought I might share some of my knowledge with you guys. And I hope you all learned something from today. Thank you.